then what's really going to give this piece its longevity is its finish. And let's think about that. The opposite of what you might think. The most durable finish for a woodworker like ourselves out here, probably that we could buy, is polyurethane. There's some acrylics, or epoxies and things like that. If I wanted to put that on this piece, that would be nice. However, you'd have to know that when that finish breaks down, that whoever owns that bowl probably won't have the skill to repair that finish, because those finishes not only being very durable, but are incredibly difficult to repair. So you might as well just get some stripper out, strip it, and then reapply the whole thing. Not many people that you'll ever give this bowl will ever have the skill to put that finish. So what do I think the best finish for a salad bowl is? You'll never guess. No finish. Okay? Because if you like what you see today, it's not shiny. There's no gloss there, nothing. But if you like what you see today, this is what you get 20, 30 years from now. And you tell whoever gets this, whether it's your daughter, your neighbor, or somebody you sold it to, just go get some mineral oil and wipe it on occasionally, and it looks brand new again. If you're happy with that, good to go. And the problem with that type of finish is, don't you? It's going to get dings on it. It's going to get scratches. It's going to get stained. Well, guess what? Wood's not for you if that's the case. But every cut and stain in that bowl, for me, is like a wrinkle on a face. It's life. And you got to get over it. It's just all it is. That doesn't bother me at all. So I'll pass this around. This actually does have a finish on it, and it's walnut oil, which I think is a pretty decent finish next to no finish, because the general public, my galleries especially, don't want a bowl with no finish on it, because if people touch it, it's going to get fingerprints on it. So mineral oil, walnut oil, some type of vegetable oil might be better than no finish. And everybody and their brother can reapply walnut oil or mineral oil. Okay, my Aunt Betty, who's 99, can actually, she's looking for a husband, if you know anybody. This will be her 6th. We call her the Black Widow. She can apply mineral oil on the bowls that I give her, because she has a couple shots in the morning, a couple shots in the evening. I said, wipe a little bit of that mineral oil on the bowl too. Some people laughed at it.
Water Lux, which I think is tongue oil and something.
A finish like Water Lux, yeah.
Is that a food safe thing, or what's the story on food safe?
Okay, Water Lux is, I think it's, the company is now calling it a varnish. Anybody want to correct me on that? Water Lux is probably the best product you can buy, that we can personally buy, and I'm going to tell you, it's 72% mineral spirits. So it doesn't have a whole lot of solids in it. Formbees is more like 80% mineral spirit. So the products get really thinned down. Water Lux is a food safe finish if the odor is gone. And it's a varnish, so it's a very difficult finish to apply, and it's a very difficult finish to repair. I use it. Peppermill would be great for Water Lux. But again, you can make your own finish a lot cheaper than you could buy it. And let's talk about that, because if I gave you the ingredients of Water Lux, I have them right here on the top of my head. If I could find what I did with that. The blue one. Can I erase this? Too late.
No! Well, maybe.
All right, let's see if this will draw. No. Tony, what did I do with that?
Pocket.
There it is.
I can't steal another one.
They're hard to come by at a school, I know. So if you went out to Home Depot, go get yourself, I'd go get you can buy 5 gallons of boiled linseed oil right at Home Depot right now. Now, boiled linseed is not pure linseed oil. It's a linseed, which is flax, and it's been blended with a metallic dryer, and that's why they call it boiled. They don't even boil it anymore. And then I would go get yourself maybe 1 gallon of polyurethane gloss, and Dephthane, Varathane, all under those manufacturers' name, and make sure it's gloss. And then I would say maybe 1 to 2 gallons mineral spirits. And for the cost of this, let's see, $120, you just bought yourself 7 gallons of something, 4 quarts, 3 quarts of Waterlocks will get you. Okay, pretty much. They do say they use tung oil, but tung oil they probably just kind of say the word over the top of the can. I don't know. Tung oil isn't going to buy you a whole lot of difference other from boiled linseed oil. And for you guys that are in the know, you could definitely disagree with me on that for sure. Tung oil is a better moisture barrier than linseed oil. They're very similar together. They both yellow like crazy, and they both dry very similar. Very little difference. But those ingredients right there, you can blend them up into an agricultural tank. I do, and I dunk my pieces right in there. Let them drip dry. I make probably 35-gallon tank of it when I do it. Yes.
You add any dryers?
I do. I add dryers too. Great. I think right at Home Depot you can get Japan dryer. They sell that in a little quart container. And if they don't sell it, Sherwin-Williams does. And what that is it's going to help this brew dry a lot faster. And that brew right there is being used by some of the biggest craft people's names in our that you would know. David Ellsworth, John Jordan. Yes.
What would be the advantage of varying the mineral spirits between 1 and 2 gallons if you put the 2 versus
Yeah.
1?
By adding more odorous mineral spirits, you're thinning out the product and giving it longer working time. So when you hear wipe-on poly, what is wipe-on poly? Well, it's a polyurethane like you could buy in a gallon that's been thinned with mineral spirits to give it a longer working time. Because when we talk about polyurethane, and it's so weird. I can remember when I was young and I was using polyurethane and I thought I was a spaz because everything I would coat a bowl with it. I had to have the jar out there, and I'd have a brush, and I'd be do. About 3/4 of the way, all of a sudden I was going, oh, it's getting tacky. Oh no! And then brush strokes are, and everything's like, oh no, everything's tacky. Well, had I known, you had a little bit of mineral spirits in there, and it wouldn't get so tacky so fast. It would thin the product out, which the drawback of that is more coats. Okay, but that's what wipe-on poly is. It has an additive in it to slow up the drying process, and that's why polyurethanes are so difficult to dry. So just another scenario on this: you're wiping on your polyurethane, everything looks good. You're probably only going to do this side. You're not going to be able to do the whole thing at once. And then you put it aside, let it sit there for an hour. Then you notice a little drip. Well, guess what? Get out the chisel, because you can't just rub that little area out and then just tack on a little polyurethane where you made that rub. It doesn't work that way. The whole thing. Okay. Unlike, let's say, lacquer, where if you got a drip with lacquer, rub out that drip, just spray right there, you're good to go. It all blends in together. But varnishes don't do that. Polyurethanes don't do that. So that's why we talk about the difficulty of the importance of the finish.
Mike?
Yes.
On your 7-gallon recipe here, how much Japan dryer is you going to add to that?
Oh, the amount that we use, great question. If you read right on the can, it would say add 2 to 3 capfuls per gallon of your brew. And that's what I would do. I would follow the directions for once in my life. I mean, in that scenario. So we mentioned film finishes. Film, I put films over here, and there's hybrids of these, and then the penetrating oils. And let's just make a list of those, because I've got to do something to keep this going, because when I finally do get on the lathe, it's not going to take long at all to finish the project. But this is interesting, I think. So let's just say the film finishes are waxes, polys, lacquers, shellacs, and then these are great because we're going to talk about the benefits and the drawbacks to all these. Help me here. Varnish. How about acrylics now? We're getting to see a lot of acrylics. epoxy.
CA.
Yeah, that will go into acrylics, cyanoacrylate, what do they call it, super glue, yeah, which is pretty durable finish. Anything else? Well, there's tons, but we got a good list there. Penetrating oils would be mineral oil, nut oil, vegetable oils, petro oils, and petro oil would be your mineral oil. Could it be? You know what? When I've been around the world in Australia a lot, I see a lot of guys who use 10W30 on their salad bowls. Literally, they do that, and so it's just basically a thicker, unrefined version of mineral oil. Okay, so those are let's see, tongue.
Low,
Who?
BLO,
BLO.
boil lynching oil.
Yes. And then there's some others now, some other hybrids. But anyway, whatever those finishes are, we separated them here, and there could be hybrids of both. You can blend these two together to make, you can make tongue oil be a film finish, no problem. Okay, add it to poly or whatever. Let's consider why we put anything on our work. Well, we were talking about the longevity of our work. I'm going to say if it was my list to make, you can make whatever list you want to make. I'm going to say the Mike Mahoney's number one, it would be marketability. Because I have to sell my work. So I really worry about how the marketplace views my work. Okay, because you're wood turners. You're not going to be real impressed with my finishes because you love wood, unlike my customers who have to be sold as to what it is to tell them what it is. So I'd like a little extra shine on my work because the general public is attracted to shine. Okay, so that I would think about using this finish if I needed to make a living in my work. And then my number two is toxicity. Okay, well, I don't care where that is for you. You'd make that up for your mind. How about repairability? That's my number three. And that's a close second too. Repair. And then 4, skill. How much skill does it take? And then cost. And there's probably, this list can go on and on and on. Okay, but let's just use those 5 as whatever you make. Well, you make bottle stoppers. Bottle stoppers would be good. What would be a good finish for bottle stoppers? And let's just say you're doing bottle stoppers for sale. I would automatically, if I go and it's for sale, I would go over to the films because that's going to be the marketable shine. I need the shine on my work. So the bottle stopper needs shine. Well, let's just say I went over and said I can get an easily piece of my bottle stopper to shine up really nice with a shellac, because shellac is incredibly easy to apply. So there's the skill set there, ease of use. So we can say skill is ease. So that fits that bill. Where does shellac fall off on the toxicity? Not that bad. So that's not bad. Repairable, pretty repairable as well, kind of. Cost is good. Repair. Where do I want to go? Oh, durability. Duh, we need durability here. Well, I'm thinking that a bottle stopper is going to get pushed on a bottle and then pulled off regularly. Not at our house. I don't even know if there's one in the house. No. So it's going to get applied, touched a lot, and maybe even have to get washed. Shellac has no durability. So the shellac, that gloss, is going to go away real quick. So maybe not a good choice. A better choice might be, I'm thinking poly. I know some people in this room make bottle stoppers. What's a good finish? CA glue. Sounds really good. Because that's going to fall under your acrylics, and those are very durable finishes. So I'm thinking that's good. There's a finish just on the marketable side of things. There's a finish out there made by Mylands. It's called a friction polish, and it's sold for pepper mills, bottle stoppers, pens, And I'm here to tell you, it's probably one of the fewer finishes I'd never put on one of those objects. But it's marketed to wood turners for that reason. You got to know it's shellac and it's not going to go very far. So think about the longevity of that bottle stopper. You sold the bottle stopper down at the craft show. They go home and used it. They see you again next year and they say, you know, that bottle stopper crapped out the second time we used it. And you, oh, bring it back and I'll repair it. Well, you do that. You don't want to repair your work in that scenario. Okay, so you make bottle stoppers. Well, I already talked about the salad bowl. What do I want to use? I want to be over here with my salad bowls, because when I sell my salad bowls, I want the customer to go home and be able to repair that finish over time and be able to wash that bowl. Yeah, polys are very durable, but polys will break down over time, and then my customer will never have the skill set to be able to reapply the mineral oil, okay, or the poly. What else can we go here? Toxicity. Why is toxicity important to me as compared to somebody who doesn't work around these finishes every day? Some of these finishes are incredibly toxic. I think of these as cigarettes, and if I'm around them long enough, they're going to make me sick. That's because I'm around them every day. You take the lid off of that, and if you take a hit of it, it's not a very pleasant experience, and it'll make you really sick. It'll harm some. All these are very carcinogenic. These not so much. They could be depending on what they're blended with. So toxicity is important. Repairability, of course. Skill, cost can be important. So you see where I'm going with finishes. Anybody else want to help me out with that? Yes.
I've got some wooden sinks, and I'm trying to find a product called Smith's Penetrating Epoxy. Put a vacuum on the bottom of the sink and then pour this. Have you ever heard where you can get that?
I haven't heard where you can get that particular finish, but I know the process. It's an epoxy that's very thin, and you vacuum it, and basically you're going to turn your wood into an epoxy. And it's probably perfect for that application, because a wooden sink could have a very short life if it wasn't protected properly. And I would say if that wooden sink was made out of the right wood, something that could take redwood, something that could take a lot of moisture over long periods of time. Rosewood, yeah. Well, rosewood doesn't take water too well, so it needs some type of finish where it won't take on moisture. Very few finishes are very good moisture bearers. So you sound like you're in the right spot, but I would just use an epoxy in a vacuum chamber and see if you can't just basically bleed that finish right through the work. Yes.
You really talk about waxes. They use this kind of sun's waxes. How do you mention it? You really have
Yeah, waxes are a 0 on the durability scale. So waxes are very lousy finishes. I use them all the time, but you have to let my customer goes, oh, we wiped the shine right off the bowl the first time we used it. And I go, well, that's what happens when you put wax on something and use the green side of the sponge. You just took it right off. It's sitting on the surface there. Waxes are made for scuff resistance and to add a little bit of shine on other things. But typically, waxes are blended with some really naughty, nasty dryers. And that's what gives them their high shine. And I use waxes to buff a little bit of shine on my work. I never mechanically buff anything, because the mechanical buff brings on a surface tension that is very short-lived. So when you've seen the Buell buffing system and you see work that comes off of that, and you go, wow, look at that, it's fantastic. Look at it in 24 hours and see what kind of reaction you get. And especially if you touch it. Your fingers will take that surface tension right away. Very lousy finish, but it's very exciting in the short term. So I buff everything with a paper towel. Paper towels are great. Newspapers also. Yes?
That mixture you put up with oil, linseed oil before?
Yeah.
You say you dip it?
I dip it.
And then you rub it?
Nope, I just let it drip dry. And if it starts to dry with a little bit of film on it, I add more mineral spirits, because I don't want it to dry with a film on it. So after it dries, if it doesn't give me a shine that I want, I dunk it again and see, once it dries, and 24 hours later, and then build it up and see what happens.
There are no drip marks on the bottom?
There better not be. If there's drip marks, that means there's too much polyurethane in there. Yep. And there's usually not more of that than there is mineral spirits because polyurethane costs a lot of money. So if you've got a lot of money and you're dumping 3 or 4 gallons of poly in there, you've got to know that you're going to get a much higher solid mixture than it should have been for that. Going back to what Waterlock says, I mentioned it was 72% mineral spirits. Well, if you add more polyurethane to it, you're raising solid content, makes it thicker, and you're going to get a buildup faster. Just like the wipe-on poly, it doesn't shine as fast as the non-wipe-on stuff because it's been thinned. More of that, more of the same thing. Yes?
Do you apply poly over a previous wax finish?
Probably not. The question was, can you apply a poly over a previously waxed finish? You've got to make sure that wax is gone, because poly doesn't stick to anything. It barely sticks to wood, and it certainly doesn't stick to itself, and not a wax, because wax is slippery.
Any film finishes work over wax?
I don't think so. I'm sure they would be, and I hate to be the guy that says 999. You can't do it, but it's always good to get a wax off anything before you reapply it, even wax. But yeah, good idea. Never, because there are finishes back in the day they said never apply over that. Like when I went to college, it was never apply film finishes over oil finishes. And I went merrily down that path for 10 years until I met a guy, Stephen Hughes from Australia, and I said, that finish is the prettiest finish in the world. What do you do? He goes, well, I apply an oil and then I spray lacquer it. I go, you can't do that. Oh, why not? Well, he did it. And sure enough, I found out there was a great way to go. Yes?
What about blends like Shine Juice?
Balin's what?
BLO and shellac and DNA. It's called Shine Juice nickname.
Shine Juice. Is that it's a product?
That's just a nickname. No, it's a
But it's a
nickname.
Balin's?
It's made of
Give me the...
one third DNA.
What is DNA? Mineral
denatured
spirits.
alcohol.
Denatured alcohol.
Denatured alcohol. 1/3 oil linseed oil and 1/3 shellac.
Yeah, that'd be
It's
like a friction polish.
yeah.
You're just making your own
And then,
finish.
You know, with mine, then on small stuff, I put CA in the mix on the final coats
Oh, interesting.
to give more durability.
Yeah, we ought to have like a club session where we just talk about blends like that, because certain things will work and certain things won't. That mixture that I put up, by the way, make sure that's an oil-based polyurethane and not a water-based, because the water bases won't blend with those.
What's the pot life of that?
The pot life. What's the shelf life of that? Not very long. You got to keep a tight lid on that. Yes, because it'll skim over. But I just take the skim off and throw that away. Just repeat the process. There was a question in here. Yes. General salable finish.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Can.
It's in a spray.
No, it's in a can.
It's in a can. Okay. That typically I would call that a Danish oil, or actually a varnish even. It's General's salable finish. It's a bowl I would never put on my salad, or it's a finish I'd never put on a salad bowl. But they call it that. Yeah, they got a couple $1 million to advertise too. Anybody would use anything. The problem with that finish is it's going to break down, and it has to be repaired. And that repairability is difficult. And you can choose whatever you want. You just got to know. Here's the story from the start. My brother, I gave him 2 pieces of mine going way back, and I went over to help him move his house. And during that time we were moving, he had a garage sale, and 2 of my turnings were on the garage sale table, 25 cents a piece. And that goes to why I'm even talking about this. Both those pieces deserve to be there, because at the time I was putting shellac on everything because I thought shellac was great. It looked great. It did everything I wanted to do, but guess what? It didn't stand the test of time. Once he and his wife used the pieces, the shellac wore off. They looked at that piece and went, uh-oh, put it in a cabinet. Well, it stayed in the cabinet for 12 years before they sold their house, and then when they pulled it out, they go, I'll just sell it. That's where we don't want our work to be. So my sister's back there going, when did that happen? And you weren't there for that one. Okay.
Did you buy them?
I didn't buy them, no.
Like, what do you have in your walnut oil, Mahoney's walnut
It's just
oil.
pure walnut oil.
It is just pure, there's no.
There's nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very high acidic acid,
Okay.
high acid oil that's not very nice on the tongue, but it dries better than grocery store culinary oil. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna ask, is there any difference between the grocery store?
Yeah, there's big difference. You can tell by the color. Yeah. And then, yeah.
I
Tony.
bought some from France that said it's been heated. Is that true? I mean, I thought it said on the label.
That's the
it's been
same
heated.
stuff that I have in a metal can.
Yeah.
They
Oh, that's the.
distribute out of Woodland, I think.
Yeah. Same people that
Yeah.
sell mine. But that's a culinary oil.
Sure.
They've dropped the acids out of it and made it nice to taste. But it doesn't work for
And
woodwork.
the recipe on the back makes a great salad dressing, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Don't use mine for that.
FYI.
Yeah. Don't use mine for
Don't try
that.
that with Mike's.
No, it won't taste good. I bet you could. But and it also drops the shelf life too. So when you get rid of the acids, you lose the shelf life. That's like olive oil, for instance, is an excellent finish, by the way, but it has no linoleic acid in it. Its acid contents are really low. Unlike nut oils, that have a very high acidic linoleic acid content,
That's
which
why
keeps them
Tong's
stable.
so popular, 'cause it's high in.
Yeah. That's what makes walnut oil and almond oil so popular for woodworkers because of its acid content. Yeah, but when you buy it out of the grocery store for culinary use, it's a different oil. It's more like mineral oil. It doesn't dry because of that. Yes.
In the
Yes,
wine
Gary.
industry, we use nitrogen quite a bit, to drive the oxygen away. Would nitrogen be recommended in a lot of those finishes?
Yeah, Gary mentioned you can buy. You didn't mention this, but Bloxygen. It's a nitrogen. You spray it out of a
I get
can.
it in big cylinders for
Yeah.
$15.
And you spray it right on top of your can of whatever finish you have, and you remove the oxygen out of there, and you can put the shelf life right back on your piece. It won't skim over everything. Yeah, it's a great way. They sell it in a can now. You can just you can get it across supplies.
$10.
Yeah, you get it at the agricultural discount. Yeah.
On the preparation. Now, you do very large bowls and stuff, and you do a commercial. So how do you prepare your wood? I know you don't sit there and wait 5 years for your wood to cure before you turn it. What do you do in preparation to the large bowls that keep the checks? And because I know you won't do anything without with any imperfections in it. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that part, Bill. But your question is a much broader question, and that's how I make bowls. So basically, I retrieve trees, and I keep all my trees as big as pieces as I can get them until I'm ready to use them. And then the day I decide to use them, they all get busted up into bolts. So I usually take the trunks of trees. So let's just say that that's a trunk of a tree there. Let's just say I always take the biggest trees too. So that's a 3-foot diameter tree, and it's 12 feet long. So I leave it like that. I wax the ends, keep it in a shady spot. Then the day I decide to use them, I say, okay, my biggest selling bowls are smaller ones, so 12-inch bowls. Well, 12 is a good dimension in a 36-inch log, isn't it? So I'd come over here and I'd bolt this log 12 inches down the road, just like this. And therefore, I'm going to get let's take a look at the end there. We doing okay, Pat? Mm-hmm. There you go. So that's looking at the end of the log there. So now I've got this 12-inch, I guess it should be like that, bolt. Okay, so these have all been bolted out into 12-inch lengths, probably 12 and a half because there's going to be some shrinkage there. Notice one thing I didn't do. I drew this just like I would chainsaw it. I never chainsawed through the whole piece. I went down like that. Why didn't I? Because the minute my chainsaw got even close to dirt, you ruin the blade. So I get just like this, then I roll it over, lop it, just so my chainsaw never touches dirt, because that's the end of the day. You don't want that to happen. Then I'm looking at the end of the log here. That's 36 inches there. I'm looking for a radial crack that emanates out of the center, probably somewhere around there. That tells me where I'd run my chainsaw, just like that. Boom, boom. I'd come out here 5.5 inches, just like that. 5.5 inches, 5.5 inches, 5.5 inches. Okay. Again, I never chainsawed anything through. It's all just like that. And I put the pith on the other side the same way, ran the saw. Then I cut this one off, just like that. That fell off. Now this whole log goes like this. It rolls over, and then I take my chainsaw and go, whoop, 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 just like that. So now that half that log is sitting there like that, I run my chainsaw just like that. That way I don't have to prop anything up. I don't have to wedge things. The chainsaw working like that works ideal. And as I come through here, I just decelerate so I don't cut my friend's leg off. Yes?
You mentioned you put them in the shade. I've seen so many times where they wrap them in black plastic and put them in the sun to heat them up and dry them faster. Is that good or bad?
Doesn't sound like a good idea. To heat it up is probably never a good idea unless you want to spalt it. But spalting means that you're progressing the rottenness. And so let's just say you're using maple. Maples are very high in sugar. So the mold is attacking that wood a lot faster, and you're degrading that fiber a lot faster. If it's oak, you could bag it because the mold doesn't attack oak like it does maple because of sugar content. There's just none in it, so it doesn't rot. You might rot the sapwood in it, but certain woods could take that. But it doesn't sound like a good thing. I just keep it cool, and then then I'd handle it there.
That was maple, so maybe that explains it.
Yeah, they might have been trying to make it stain. Phil?
If you want to spalt maple, you induce a special bacteria.
I don't, because I think that bacteria is already out there, and we're breathing it, and it eventually just overpopulates that area. Matter of fact, on that note, go to YouTube, Sarah, S-A-R-A, wood spalting, and we'll have her in Utah next year. But anyway, check out that video. It's a great subject. She knows more about spalting than her little finger. Yeah. So anyway, I take that plank of wood. So I've got I should have erased all that. I've got all these slabs. So this is, you can see there's 3 bowls right there, 2 bowls here, and a D-cut there, bowl there, bowl there, bowl there, bowl there, bowl there, bowl there, whatever. And then I take these slabs, run them to the bandsaw, cut circles, and then when I rough turn the bowl, it looks just like this. Notice the rounded edges there. So if this is a 10-inch bowl, this whole bowl is 1 inch thick, and I've softened the edge right there, and then I wax everything. A green wood seal. Bill, this is your question, right? Back to that.
Yeah.
And then they're stored in a cool, dark place. Okay? And they dry, in this case, if it was maple, it would dry in 90 days. If it's walnut, probably twice that long. I don't use a kiln or anything. I just use good old-fashioned airtime. Question?
When it's drying, will it crack?
Well, I'm the 3 things. I'm harvesting my wood in the winter. That helps. Second thing, I'm using the trunks of the trees and not the branches. That's a big help because that wood's more stable, the trunk wood. And then third, I'm taking the tension. If you roughed out a bowl and left these sharp edges there, these are tension areas there that tend to crack bowls. If you look at the side of a bowl like that, you'll see a crack coming right there on the side. And if you leave those square like that, those are tension points. I soften these edges up, and it helps immensely the cracking part.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I probably should start turning now soon, huh, Tony?
Okay.
Okay. Question there?
Talk about sanding.
Let's talk about sanding. God, what could we note about sanding? I guess what I would say about sanding, an item like this isn't real easy to sand. This one's probably been hand sanded mostly, just because of all the little details. Probably should mention about a piece like this, the crispness of the details. If you look at an item like this, and I'll pass this around, just look at everywhere there's a cut on this piece. The backside, even where you put your name, the little detail back in here. Look at the crispness of it. There's no torn grains in there. There's no sanding marks or anything. But an item like this, whatever its value is, let's put a $50 value on this. Sanding that properly will go a long way to increasing the value. It really will. So a piece like this, typically, I would sand 120, 180, 220, 320, 400, call it good for me. You can go to 600, 800, 1200 if you want. I stop at 600 because my eyes don't see scratches that small. So I call it good, and you can only go so far until somebody can't afford it. You know, that's really what it comes down to. So Christmas of detail, we'll take a look at that. That's a collection plate too, so. Tony.
I'll buy it.
You'll buy it? Oh no, just saying, $50. I will sand wet tonight. Oh, maybe I won't sand wet tonight. What did you bring me?
What did I
You
bring?
brought me sandpaper, right?
I brought you sandpaper and a drill bit.
Do you have any walnut oil? I'll sand dry then. I would typically sand wet in this situation just to keep the dust down, and I would sand with walnut oil. But I'll dry sand if we don't have any walnut oil. I might even use water too, I don't know, just to keep the dust down for me. After all these years of wood turning, I've just found out I have a wood dust allergy. Interesting. Might cut my career short. It's just like sanding wet with anything. The oil is a lubricant that will knock the dust down. It gives your sandpaper a lot more longevity because what kills sandpaper is heat. And the oil will keep the heat down and not overheat the oil. 'Cause you can keep, by the way, I use a sandpaper in my shop. Sandpaper is the most expensive tool in my shop. And I use the most expensive sandpaper because it saves me a lot of money. And usually know the quality of the sandpaper by how much it costs. The blue 3M ceramic paper is typically 2 to 3 times more expensive than any paper you can buy, but guess what? You get 7 to 10 times the lasting longevity out of it. So it's a perfect fit for me because it lowers the sanding bill down real quick. So the oil basically cools the sandpaper down. But the biggest problem people make with oil sanding or wet sanding in general is not using enough lubricant. Use more than you think. So if you just dab a little oil on your paper, you're going to clog it. So add more. If you use walnut oil, use a lot more. Yeah, right. Any other questions? I know you guys want to go home tonight. I've got to find.